welcome back to the realm. We're here tonight to talk about chapter 29, of course, which is World War number one. So we'll get started into the agenda, and then we'll go from there. Definitely some question and answers at the end to get you ready. But first of all, I have some key advice for you, like I always do at the beginning. We'll talk about some of the selected key terms and maybe a few key figures. I didn't put everything on the list today, just a few that I think are most important. And then we'll go into some short answer, talk about some of the short answer possibilities that are on your review sheet. We will have some AP advice and some tips for preparation. And then we'll have question and answer session and maybe a few points for final advice. So let's get into the key advice for today. As usual, number one, make sure that you're writing things down from the session, something that you can add to your review sheet, anything that you feel is pertinent or important. Go ahead and make sure that you make a note about that. Number two, as always, pray for the right things. You want to make sure that you're praying for the important things in life, not asking for success on this quiz or even asking for success in your athletic endeavors, but more so just making sure that you are praying the prayer of gratitude, saying thanks to the good Lord for all the blessings that you have. And of course, use those talents and blessings to the fullest in life. Number three, be here now. I know that today is Sunday. Tomorrow is Monday. You have the day off of school. So the quiz is not until Tuesday. So you really want to focus your mind to get ready for the quiz paper coming to your way on Tuesday. Number four, before you go to bed tonight, make sure you say thank you to your parents. Of course, they do so much for you. And I think it's important to always, always express your gratitude to them because they're really a big part of your success. Number five, meet the challenge. I know you've been on a break, but we're going to have a quiz coming back the first day. So you want to make sure that you can rise to the occasion there and make the best of the situation. You have a lot of time to prepare and study. So I think that those are some ways that you can really get yourself ready, of course, for this quiz. Okay, I'm going to move down into the key terms, which are coming up next. We'll get into that. While I'm doing that, if you could, I see that there's only about 14 or 15 of you on, which is really low numbers for us. Usually we're at like 40. But if you could, go ahead and shoot me a hello in the comments so that I know that you're here. And don't forget to like the video, so that'll help me out. Okay, the first term that we want to go over is going to be one that we had a lot of questions in class. I wanted to make sure that you had a really good understanding of what this really meant. It's the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina are two very small countries. Prior to World War I, they had a lot of Slavic people living there. There were two big elements, big countries that wanted to take over Slavic lands. You had Austria, which was the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time, but you also had Serbia. They also wanted to expand. So they were both kind of competing to expand, to engulf or absorb more Slavic peoples. And so the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina was when Austria took over both of those lands. And this led into a pre-war standoff with Serbia and Austria. And eventually it led to the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which we know was kind of the really big driving force for World War I to begin. Okay. Next, the next one was another one that a lot of people had questions about in class on Thursday, and that's the Alsace and Lorraine territory. The reason why this territory was so important is because it was highly industrialized. They had a lot of factories, a lot of machinery there. It was a region that's kind of on the northeastern border of France, and it was lost by France and gained by Germany due to the Franco-Prussian War. One major reason why Bismarck was concerned with France was because he thought, okay, France lost this major territory. They may eventually try and retake it. So that's one of the things that you have to really take into account as well. Okay. Next, I do want to talk about militarism. Militarism was another driving force for change during this time span. And it was one of the big factors that actually led into, of course, the big time confrontation of World War I. So one of the things that you got to take into consideration here is that militarism, is the glorification of military power. And it's constantly keeping your military prepared for battle. So when you think about it, what you're talking about is you're really focusing your military focus on your military, you get them ready. And sometimes these countries just want to exercise these armies and these militaries that they've created. So you got to think about this. Like if you spent all this money on creating a military, a strong fighting force, but you never really utilize it, like you're really wasting your money, right? So one of the big picture things that you got to take into account here is that these countries kept their militaries ready. They're just waiting for something to happen. Archduke Franz Ferdinand gets assassinated, Austria declares war, and then they're all wanting to use the military. So militarism is getting that military ready and keeping it constantly prepared for battle. Next is the Schlieffen Plan. The Schlieffen Plan was Germany's plan to avoid fighting a two-front war. Remember, Germany was in the middle between France and Russia on the opposite side. So what they came up with is a plan that they were going to attack France first. They hoped to beat them or defeat them quickly, and then send their full forces back to the east to fight Russia. It really hinged on the factor that they believed France was weak and that they could beat them in a matter of a few weeks, maybe less. And then they also said, hey, Russia's unindustrialized. They don't have railroads. So it's going to take them a really long time to get their full forces to the border. So we think we can go, or they thought they could go defeat France and still have enough time to get back to the border to fight Russia. Okay, next is total war. Total war is where all resources are directed toward a war effort. Even civilians would become targets during what is called a total war. So when you have total war, you do things like rationing, you use propaganda, you have bombing of strategic sites and locations where civilians may be at risk. And so you kind of devote all of your efforts to the war effort. Even companies like Campbell's Soup or Jeep in the United States would be kind of sequestered to build Jeeps or create canned goods for soldiers. So that is something that also plays a part of total war as well. Next is unrestricted submarine warfare. Germany basically declared and announced that they are going to sink any ship in waters that they control. This was really to prevent any cargo or supply ships from helping the Allied powers. Like, technically, it's for the United States. Like if the United States is sending, or Canada is sending supplies or military weapons in a ship to Great Britain or France, the Germans are like, we're going to sink it. We don't care if it's a passenger ship or not, because we believe that there are weapons or cargo or food supplies that could help the Allies. And so we're going to sink it down. And this happened over and over again. A lot of United States ships were destroyed by submarines. And also a passenger ship was it was a British passenger ship called the Lusitania, but it had 212 American citizens on it. When that ship went down, that got the United States closer and closer to getting into World War I. Okay, rationing is really important to understand. It's basically limiting how much of an item consumers can buy if the item is deemed necessary for the war effort. So a lot of things that were rationed during World War I would include food products like canned goods, okay? Canned soups, for example. Ready-made foods, you could only buy so many of them. You had to go in with like a coupon, and you had to submit the coupon to get the goods. So you could only get like 2 cans of soup per week or something along those lines. It depended on the different cities, but that was really one of the big issues that people faced during a time of rationing. We may be doing this pretty soon with gas. Like I watched the news the other day, and it said there's a state of emergency on oil and gas. And so what they could do is they could make restrictions on like what days you can drive in certain parts of the city. They may block off certain roads in the city. They may increase public transportation. They may put commercials out there to start to drive people towards sharing rides or using Uber or something along those lines to help utilize a little bit less gas. So those are some of the things that could be coming our way in the modern state of affairs with rationing. Okay, I'll talk a little bit more about this one next, propaganda. Propaganda is really one-sided information that's usually used to sway people's opinion toward some type of cause such as war. I will show you some examples here on a slideshow. So if you just give me 1 second, I would love to share this with you. Okay, so what it is just a little bit of an example of propaganda. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to take this down for a second. Yes. Okay, so propaganda, once again, is a form of communication that is aimed at influencing the attitude of a community toward some cause or position. Usually presents information to influence an audience, but sometimes it presents facts selectively, and you can often use propaganda to lie by omission. Here's an example of Kaiser Wilhelm. This is Kaiser Wilhelm, and he's taking a bite out of the globe. This is basically saying that Kaiser Wilhelm was the aggressor in World War I, making him look like the bad guy, right? So it would sway people's public opinion to definitely understand that Kaiser Wilhelm is the bad guy. The next slide is, I'm going to try to make this a little larger. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Here's Kaiser Wilhelm a little bit closer for you. And then this one is just like a collage of examples of propaganda. This one's my favorite. I have this one in my classroom. It says, "We can do it." This is Rosie the Riveter. She represents females that went into work in factories while men were off fighting at the war. And this was a big reason why women gained voting rights after World War I in the United States. So that's just one example. This one's Appreciate America. There's Mickey Mouse saying, "Come on, gang, all out for Uncle Sam," right? And it says from Mickey. So you can see that you try to play on people's emotions and utilize really popular media to sway people's public opinion. This one's a really interesting one. You have to kind of think about this one to understand it, but it goes really right along with what I was just talking about. It says, "When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler." So this was one from World War II. Then it says, "Join a car sharing club today." So it's got like a little chalk version of Adolf Hitler riding in this car. Basically, it's saying, hey, if you're not sharing a ride with somebody, you're using gas that you could have cut in half. And that gasoline and that oil could have been going to the war effort. So that's an example of like how propaganda works. And that one's from World War II, but some of these are from World War I. Like here's one from World War I. It says, "Help Uncle Sam stamp out the Kaiser." And you can do that by buying U.S. government bonds. So basically what a bond is you pay $100 bond, right? You get $100 bond. Basically you pay $100 and that money goes to the U.S. government. But you can't really take it out for 7 years because in 7 years, the money will double. So if you take it out like after 1 year, you're only going to get the $100 back. If you let it stay for 7 years, you let the government use your money for 7 years, it will double. And when you take it out, you'll get $200. A lot of times you get bonds when you're little, like you make your first communion or your first birthday or you do your confirmation. Like I still have some bonds from when I was a kid that I haven't ever cashed in. So that's something that comes into play as well. And this is just a form of saying, hey, if you buy these bonds, the government can use them to essentially help fund the war effort. Okay, I think I'm going to go back now and I will stop sharing. Hopefully you were able to see that. I'm not sure, but if not, and you wanted me to share that slideshow, I can always do that on the weekly agenda. Just throw it in the comments if you'd like me to share. Okay, now back to the key terms. The Zimmerman Note would be next. The Zimmerman Note was actually just a telegram that was going from Germany to Mexico. It was written by one of the German foreign secretaries, Arthur Zimmerman, and we intercepted it. And basically the note was trying to persuade Mexico to attack the United States, which was kind of a nifty ploy because had Mexico attacked the United States, we probably would not have got involved in the war in Europe. But it kind of worked in a counteractive way for them because by us intercepting the message and understanding that they were telling Mexico that they would come over here and help Mexico defeat us, that is really what got us into the war. So the sinking of the Lusitania, the Zimmerman Note, and just the unrestricted submarine warfare that the Germans were utilizing are some of the factors that led to the United States getting into World War I. The final term that's on my list before we move on is called the Gallipoli Campaign. This was an Allied effort led by actually Winston Churchill, famous Prime Minister of England when he was in his younger days. It was an attempt to open up a supply line to the Russians because they were unindustrialized and they were really lacking guns and ammunition. And we were trying to create the supply line by going through Ottoman Controlled territory. We would have had to defeat them to be able to do this, and it was a failure. This was a really big hit on Winston Churchill's prestige and his clout, but he eventually gained that back. Okay, we're moving our way through the list. I want to go to some of the short answer possibilities. If you're looking at your review sheet, you know that the first short answer, major factors leading into the United States entry into World War I. I just sort of answered that one. You had the Zimmerman Note, which was intercepted message from Germany to Mexico. Number two, you had just the general German practice of unrestricted submarine warfare. They were sinking our ships. And then number three, one of the ships was special. It was called the Lusitania. The sinking of the Lusitania had 212 United States passengers, which was really, really a big factor in us getting involved in World War I. So those are really the three big factors that got us involved. If we were going to pick a side, we're definitely going to go with the Allies because we have a greater trade partnership with France and Great Britain. So you got to take that into consideration as well. Okay, now on to the very important AP tips and suggestions. You know that there will be an AP portion of the quiz. So once again, let me talk a little bit about the layout of the quiz, the format. You're going to have multiple choice mostly. There is a matching section. The matching section will have, I'm talking about the content part right now first. The matching section is going to have a lot of your alliances and the different countries and some of the early moves of World War I. So know your countries, know your alliances, and know your key figures. That's where you're going to get assessed in the matching. Then it goes into a pretty big, let me look at it. Yeah, like the vast majority, I'd say there's 8 matching, and then there's like 22 multiple choice. So that's what I'm looking at right now. And then there are 3 short answer, which pretty much are the ones on your review sheet there. So we just went over that. So let's have an understanding that that's what you need to be prepared for. Okay, on the AP, as I promised you, there's going to be an MCQ. The multiple choice question AP style is going to have 3 questions on it. Okay, so you got to answer those 3 questions. And then after that, you are going to have to do an SAQ. So remember, when you're doing an SAQ, you need to use ACE. Answer the question, cite specific examples, and then explain how your examples relate to your answer to the question, right? So ACE, you got to ACE it to get the full credit. And you really should be writing at least a paragraph. Short answers in the AP are not like one sentence. Like if you write me one sentence, I'm going to mark it wrong. You need to write at least 4 sentences to get these right. And then you have to use ACE properly to answer the question. So, this time of year, I'm going to grade these hard because we've been doing this all year long. By now, we should have this down. Okay, but some tips that I have written on my board here. For the MCQ, the best suggestion and tip that I can give you is understanding like what I talked about in lesson about how people thought that World War I was going to go really fast because of all the technology. Like they thought, oh, it'd be like a week or a couple weeks, couple months, and everybody would be back home. And then some of the expectations of World War I, like what did countries expect to have happen? Then for the SAQ is a little bit more involved. The SAQ, you need to know about propaganda. I spent quite a bit of time talking about propaganda, giving you some examples tonight. You'll need to know about some of the new technology that was involved in World War I, such as tanks, poison gas, fighter planes, machine guns, submarines. Those are some of the things that you will need to know. And then, of course, I think what's really important when you take a look at World War I is the Treaty of Versailles, which ended the war, and the Paris Peace Conference. So kind of understanding those basic elements would really help you succeed on the AP SAQ portion. Okay, I think that is where I want to stop with my portion of the talking. It's been 20 minutes straight that I've been going. So I'm going to go to the comments now. I see that Many of you have said hello, which I do appreciate. And at this time, what I would like to ask is, I'm going to open up for questions. So if you have any major questions, feel free to go ahead and put them up on the screen, and I will answer those questions for you. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Oh, we got a party going on here. All right. Pretty cool stuff. I like that. Gianna, Cam, Mia, Sam, and Kira. Excellent. Wonderful. I'm glad you're all here. That is fantastic. I hope you're having fun. Staying safe, of course. But any questions? I'm looking for questions. I'd love to answer your questions. All right, here we go. Working definition of the First Battle of the Marne. When you take a look at the Battle of the Marne, one of the things that you got to understand is that it is really the first major conflict of World War I. It's the Allies with France and Germany going at it, and you've got Great Britain helping out. Austria's helping the Germans. The most important thing to know about this, Grace, is that the Allies eventually win the First Battle of the Marne. And so the fact that they win means that the Schlieffen Plan is pretty much null and void, because the Germans had to win that first battle in order for their plans in World War I to be successful. So since they didn't win, it definitely meant that they were not going to be successful, and they have to fight the war on two fronts. So that's really what I want you to know about that First Battle of the Marne. That's Mr. Bean, by the way, right? That's a pretty funny picture war. Okay, next we have, who is George Clemenceau? Excellent, Dominic. George Clemenceau was the representative from France that attended the Paris Peace Conference. That's really all you would need to know. Reese, can you go over new weapons of World War I? Sure. Let me give you a list. I don't really need you to be able to explain them all that well, but you want to be able to name some of the new things. And I think they're pretty much self-explanatory. But let me go through my mind and come up with a list for you. Tank, submarine, fighter planes, machine guns, and poison gas. Those are some of the really big new weapons and technology that were utilized in World War I. Justin K, can we go over why the Germans thought they could accomplish the Schlieffen Plan? Yes. So I'm going to bank on the fact that you know what the Schlieffen Plan is. It's attacking France first, defeating them quickly, and then rushing back to deal with the Russians. The reason that they thought they could do this is because Russia had not yet industrialized. And so they figured, if you're not industrialized, you don't have railroads. So it's going to take, you're going to have to walk, basically. You're going to have to walk across the long span of Russia to get to the border, right? And so they figured that's going to take Russia a while. It only took them 10 days in reality, which was much faster than anybody had expected. But that was one of the hinge points. The second hinge point that they thought they could accomplish the Schlieffen Plan is because they thought France was actually weak militarily. They thought their military was much stronger than France's, and they figured that they could knock them out in a very quick fashion. Okay, I am ready for more questions. These are all fantastic questions, and I appreciate all of you for asking them. I'm just waiting for questions. Or if you want to talk about anything, go ahead and put it in the chat. Anything that you have interesting going on, I'd love to be helpful for you, supportive. Okay, well, I don't see many new questions coming in. I am going to go ahead and make a final piece of advice. I would want to remind all of you, I put it in the intro. I put it in my intro there that the Civ project is due Thursday, right? The Civilization Project Step 3, which is the most involved part of the project. You have to do a lot of work. And then you have the opportunity to get the bonus power rank points if you go above and beyond, kind of like the examples that I showed you in class. So you have that opportunity. But it is 50 points. So if you don't turn it in on time, it's going to kill your grade for the last marking period. If you do everything you're supposed to do, you're going to get a 50 out of 50, which is a really big help for your grade. So that's something that you really need to consider. Also, I only saw maybe 40, 45 parents on Thursday. It was really a light conferences. But all the parents that I saw, I showed them the QR codes and the calendar that I created for you to get yourself ready to take that AP test. So that review packet that I gave you, that's really important. Like if you don't have anything to do tonight or tomorrow, like start studying. You know what I mean? Like use your time wisely. Okay, we got a couple new questions here. We got Dominic says, what did Vittorio Orlando do? Like your question about George Clemenceau, Vittorio Orlando was the representative for Italy at the Paris Peace Conference. So he represented Italy at the Paris Peace Conference. Gabby, thank you for letting me know. Yeah, that's cool. We'd love to have you there. I really like to see you working on the hurdles a little bit. I want to enter you in the hurdles on one of the meets. So I know that's something that you're interested in. Throwing, probably Coach Widows won't be able to make it because it's a 9 a.m. practice and he's teaching. So, we have to work from there. But yeah, definitely love to see you if you can make it. If not, I totally understand. Other questions, guys and gals? Anything that you think of, go ahead and throw it into the questions. I'll hang out here for a few more moments. I want to thank all of you for joining. Yeah, we did hit 20,000 views. So that was kind of a big milestone for me. I was happy to see that. We got a real question. Here we go. For the matching, should we just know who was in the Triple Alliance, the Triple Entente, Central Powers, and stuff like that? Yeah, that's all you really need to know is the countries that made up those alliances. There will be more to the matching than just the alliances, but that's like 4 out of the 8 questions right there. So yes, that is important to know. And you want to know like how the Triple Alliance that eventually became the Central Powers, how they were different, like because they had different countries involved at different times before and after the war began, right? So you'll need to know that information as well. Excellent question. Okay, well, we have been on. Oh, we got another question. Here we go. Can you repeat the second reason for leading factors? I don't remember the order that I said them, but I'll just repeat all 3, Grace. Number 1 is the Zimmerman Note, which was the note from Germany to Mexico, trying to get Mexico to attack us. Number 2 is unrestricted submarine warfare. It's Germany's declaration that they're going to sink any ship in German-controlled waters. And then number 3 is kind of an offshoot of that. It's the sinking of a specific ship called the Lusitania, which had 212 American passengers. So those are really the 3 factors right there. I think that's the same order that I said them earlier, but I can't remember. Okay. All right. Well, guys and gals, I want to wish you a great Sunday night. Hey, don't forget to tell your parents thank you. I think that's really one of the most important things that you can do. And make sure that you say your prayers in the proper fashion. Pray for the right things. That's always an important factor there. Got a new question. Look at that. Every time I say it's time to go, there's a new question that pops up. What should we know about Kaiser? Well, you should know about Kaiser Wilhelm being the leader of Germany during World War I, but you also want to know like some of the things that he did kind of caused World War I to escalate, like him saying he wants to build a navy that would rival the British. That kind of made the British kind of go on red alert, and they're like, okay, we want to stay dominant. We want to prove that we're still the strongest naval power. So that was really a big factor of them getting involved in the war, and then he was kind of boisterous about unrestricted submarine warfare. Like he's out there announcing that they're going to sink any ships. He's out there announcing that they want to take back Alsace and Lorraine territory, or they want to keep a hold of it. he was really loud and boisterous about representing German nationalism. So I think that sort of led to an escalation of the war. Yes, thank you, Grace. And hey, good luck in the soccer season. You girls are looking good. I think you're going to have a good year. So best wishes to your team, and best wishes to the crew team. I saw the crew team working out even yesterday morning. Those girls and guys are really, really dedicated. They get up in the very early morning to get there. So I really liked seeing that. We've got softball. We've got some ladies playing the softball, so I want to wish them good luck. And of course, track is going to kick off our season coming up here on the next weekend. So good luck to all the spring sports, and good luck in all of your classes. And I hope that all your families are healthy and safe. With that, I'm going to say good night, and thanks again for joining. We'll see you back at it on Tuesday for the quiz.